And in 1940 something, they just filled it up. So they dug all that out to see where it was at. And then they re-put it and packed it
I
all
want to put something.
in layers. So the building will have a good footing.
We're good. Where was the creek, Mr. Mayor?
Right where that, remember they dug that big hole? You couldn't even see the truck?
Are you talking about the pork one?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
that was where the old creek bed was.
Oh.
We're live right now.
Yeah, shut the door.
But that's special.
Well, no, you aren't doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody ready?
Mhm.
Oh, that's right, you're sitting, I think
Yep.
we're missing somebody. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting of the Village of Walton Hills of Tuesday, September 13th, 2022 at 7:04 PM. I will do the roll call here. Okay, Jennifer Allen,
Here.
Mary Brenner Miller,
Here,
Fred Nielsen. Here. Raymond Whedon.
Present.
Brian Spitznagel.
Here.
All of council present, along with our law solicitor, John Montello, and myself, the mayor. Okay? Any comments related to any agenda items that are on there from the residents or from council at this time? You could ask questions as we go along, of course, too, but if anybody has any comments related to agenda items before we start?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
This does not have to do with the agenda item, but I'd like to make a motion to make sure that we all keep our comments to 5 minutes.
Second.
Vote on the motion.
Yes.
Oh, Jennifer Allen,
Yes.
Mary Brenner Miller,
Yes.
Fred Nielsen,
Yes.
Raymond Whedon,
Yes.
Ryan Spitznagel. Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
would like to ask if Mary would be willing to take care, watch that 5-minute mark. She's got the timer.
I brought the time. I can do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm going to start with the legislation. Item A, which is ordinance 2022-8, property assessments. I know last week we just had a question, council had a question about the exhibit, and I know we just received the exhibit, so if we want to take a look at that. We did have a finance meeting before this meeting at 5:30. Everybody that you see, well, all of council was present along with our fiscal officer, Angela Reve, and myself. So we just finished that. Angela had another commitment with her family, so she came to that and then left for this. So I'm also the clerk of council tonight. So, okay. I'd like to have that pass this for suspension. If council's good with that, put it on for legislation for next week's council meeting. It is part of something we do every year. It's assessments that we put on property taxes in the village here, from grass cutting to junk removal, tree removal. As you can see from, these are some new assessments here.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I believe that the property assessments and the tax rate have to be done prior to October.
Yes. That's why I would like to ask for suspension if we could. And just to kind of let council know, if there is any questions, it looks like I'm probably going to have a COW meeting before the council meeting, just because there's some other issues short to talk about, but we just weren't ready for them tonight. So if there is any questions on this, if you related to that, or we can also talk about that in the COW meeting. I was just going to put ask if you guys are okay with a COW meeting before the council meeting. So if there's any more discussion on anything or something that isn't answered, we'd also have another opportunity to answer those questions. Any questions from any residents or any residents that are watching the live stream
Not
or
yet.
non-residents? Okay, council okay for me to move on to item B?
Yeah.
Okay, item B, resolution 2022-19, the tax rate. I don't think there was any questions on that. That's another housekeeping item we have to send to the county auditor. It's certifying our millage, which hasn't changed. We haven't had no tax increase. It's the same as the 3 mills that we submitted last year. It's just something that is required, so I'd like to ask for suspension on that too. Any questions related to that? Okay,
Mr. Mayor,
yes,
I'd just like to say that within 5 years' time, I'm hoping we can actually reduce that amount for our residents.
I hope we have that opportunity. I think the village is definitely moving in a very good direction with economic development, and we're seeing our revenues increase. So that's definitely a plus. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next item. Is everybody good with that? Any residents have any questions to do with the tax rate that we have to send the county? Okay, item C, resolution 2022-20. That's the OPWC grant for 2023. I know one of the questions that came out of that, because I did mention that we submitted 2 applications. I wasn't sure at the time, and when we presented it, whether it was one application with 2 projects, which was Barclay Estates, and the continuation of Alexander Road. So after our meeting, me and Joe talked, and I said, Joe, send me a memo relating to that. So you do have the memo in front of you. I did put one in your box. I can read it. It's very short. I'll just read it since it came up in the last COW meeting too. This is from our village engineer, Joe Gelati, and this has to do with the OPWC funding applications that we are submitting, and we have to take a piece of legislation, which will be on the next council meeting, allowing the mayor to submit for those grants. Okay, so here's what he has. Please note that the village intends to make application to the Ohio Public Works Commission, OPWC, this fall for outside funding assistance for 2 different proposed paving projects, those being Barclay Estates resurfacing and Alexander Road Phase 3 resurfacing. Each project requires its own application. As such, 2 separate applications were made to OPWC. Submitting multiple applications to OPWC is acceptable, and each application will be scored and ranked on its own merit. There is no scoring incentive or penalty for making 2 applications in 1 year. It is possible that the village may be awarded funding for neither project, one project, or the other, or potentially both projects. Historically, final funding results are made public in March of the following year. So we'll know in March of 2023, unless it's earlier. So we're going to be very optimistic and hope we get both of them. And if not, we'll still discuss moving forward. I know we talked about in the road program, Barclay Estates being the next one on the list for 2023, and I know we'll still look at other funding for the continuation of Alexander Road. So we'll keep applying. Any other questions related to that?
Yeah, Mayor.
Yeah,
I did have one
Mr.
question.
Weedham.
So when these grant applications are submitted with the scope of work already developed and a rough estimate of the total project cost? Is that, or is it just, how did that piece work in terms of what we're asking for from the state?
I think Joe has, I don't have those numbers in front of me, but what I recall, I think he gives the total of the project, and then they award whatever the amount, you know, they might have a cap on it. But I can find that out. That's a good question. We can find that out.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Historically, they're usually just called engineer's estimates, and how he puts it together, I think he just puts some loose figures that he has generally together, and it usually gives a good baseline for when a contractor comes in and is going to bid against it or for it. And one thing in my profession, they ask, well, what was the engineer's estimate? Because usually they, the surety, the underwriter, presumes that the engineer has a pretty good idea of what the cost should be. Now, granted, material prices are going through the roof. Every day, things are going up and down. So that could be in flux. So he can give you a price now, and it can change 3 months from now. Just put, maybe I'm giving you more information than you want, but that's usually how it works.
And I can get those figures. I'll see what, I can see what Joe
Yeah.
submitted in the application. It's not, he doesn't have it in the legislation. See, John, did you? I don't see it. No, I didn't see it there either. Okay. All right. That's not a problem, I can get that. Okay, any questions related to the OPWC grant application that will be? I'd like to get suspension on that, so we can get that legislation in, supporting that along with the application. If everybody's good with that. Then we have item D, our residents. Good, any questions relating to that? Any residents?
Nope, nothing online.
Nobody online?
Well, we have
requesting?
people online, but.
Well,
no
I mean, yeah, no,
questions.
not,
Yes.
I know as soon as I said, no residents requesting that, okay. All right, we'll move on to item D, 2022-21, that's Cuyahoga County All Hazard Mitigation Plan. I know one question on that was the due date on that, and that isn't due till November 18th. So, that's, I know the chief, if I have the chief here, that was something, if there was any questions relating to that, that is something they had to, how many years is it, Stan? You gotta, that you have to do that mitigation plan. Every 3 years, so it resubmits. So it's another housekeeping item that needs to be done. I'd like to ask for suspension, but if council wants to put it on for readings, that would be up to you, but it's,
Mr. Mayor?
yes.
I'd like to ask the Chief Jaworski, has anything changed in the plan?
Stan, can you come up to the mic? I have somebody sitting next to you in a green shirt, I won't mention any names, that will be mad if I knew you were going to. I knew you were going to say he better get up there.
I'll give it Shannon and we'll go over everything that this is the first.
Yeah, I know we've been dealing with Shannon, but it's according to her, nothing's changed. I
No,
just
nothing's
updated some numbers, but
They
I can-
call and listen to everything.
Chief, do you know, does the plan run from the beginning of 2023 through the end of 2027, or
I'll have to
till the
check
beginning
dates.
of
I'll have to check
2027?
to make sure.
Okay, just curious, because it's listed in here, but it doesn't define exactly.
so you want to know we'll get,
Yeah, just if
we'll-
it,
yeah, we'll find it.
you know, if it's from like the beginning of 2023 to the beginning of 2027, or to the end of 2027.
okay. So what I can do, I'll have it on for legislation, and you can decide, we'll have a COW meeting before that meeting, so you can always decide at that time what you want to do. I'm sure we'll have all those questions answered, so. And the due date is November 18th. Thanks, Stan, I don't,
Thank you.
you want. Is everybody good with that? All the residents have any questions related to that resolution? Cuyahoga County All Hazard Mitigation Plan, another housekeeping item that we have to do every so many years. Any,
Not online yet.
okay, then we'll move on to item E, Resolution 2022-22, that's property tax advances. Didn't have anything, any questions for that from the last COW meeting? I don't know if anybody has any questions relating to that now.
Mr. Mayor, this is for the year 2023, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, you're always 6 months per year behind. We're asking them to forward the taxes they fill out for 2022 as early as they possibly can in 2023. There's usually only 2 disbursements a year, and by doing this, they'll do it quarterly rather than every 6 months, basically.
But the legislation's correct with the year 2023, okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions from council relating to that? Any questions from the residents? Whether they're here or live streaming? Okay, we'll move on to item F, which is Resolution 2022-23. That's the Community Parks, Recreation, and Conservation Project Grant. I know we talked about that in the last COW meeting. Also, piece of legislation accepting the grant. So I'd like to ask for first reading on that. It's a nice piece of legislation when you're accepting free money. Never a bad thing there, so. And it's definitely going to improve our park. I know the Recreation Committee looked at it quite a bit. Mr. Spitznagel worked with them on the grant along with Natalie, and we received it, so it's a good thing. Any questions related to that from council, or?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Jennifer.
I'd like to ask the head of the rec committee, Councilman Spitznagel, yeah. If you were going to have a rec meeting specific to that grant, maybe with Rob and stuff, or if we could do that at some point?
Yes, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
to answer your question, yes, there is, as part of this, there's certain steps that we have to do, and the first part is a report. I'm assuming that that most of that report has to be filled out by the fiscal officer because it deals with whether we're a tax exempt entity and all that stuff. Once that is done, then they will, down at the granting, the people who grant this, they will disperse the money. We can take advances on that 48,000 if we need to, or if we want to. And then anything at the end that
You'd
comes
be
out of it
reimbursed.
will be reimbursed, yeah. But that's the first step, get that thing mailed in, and then they'll send us, the authorization that it's good to go. And then we have to finalize plans with Rob, yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to ask for suspension for that. Get that moving to the next council meeting next week, next Tuesday. Any questions from council relating to that item F? To the residents that are here, or any residents that are live streaming, or anybody else that's live streaming?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
In regards to the Parks and Recreation Grant, I would like to request Councilman Spitznagel introduce that because he had done so much work on that grant for us.
Sure, thank you.
They want me to remember all this stuff, so you can think for this, right?
You're making notes.
I am making notes. Okay. Everybody good with item F then? Okay. Okay, now so those all fell under item 4, all the legislation. Now we're on item 5, which is discussion of the BZA appointment. As you know, we had 2 applicants, 2 residents, 2 very interested residents, one a former member of the BZA. I would like to appoint Mike Cummings to that position. He has years of experience. The other resident would do a great job too. When our residents apply for it, we never have had a bad resident apply. Everybody that applies wants to contribute to their community, so we're very fortunate. We do get applicants that want to get involved because the stipend they get certainly isn't going to make you rich. It's more about helping out your community when you're serving on the zoning board, the planning commission. So we appreciate every applicant, and I know it's hard for me in this position sometimes to, pick one over the other. We did interview both council and myself. We did interview both residents, Mr. Conkey and Mike Cummings at the time, had 2 very good interviews. Then we went to recess, so I did let both parties know that it would be a while until we got back, so they were aware of that. I didn't put the legislation on there because I don't like to put blank legislation on there. I would ask for support from council. I'd like us to have a 5-0 vote on it, if council's all in agreement. I think it's important. My big decision was I think we have a newer zoning board committee. I think bringing Mr. Cummings back brings a lot of experience. We've had other zoning board members retire or were done serving after many years, and we're thankful for that. And anytime any of our board members walk away, we lose that expertise, because those are positions that, you get better as you go on, just because you understand the situations and the formality. Both parties brought a lot to the table. I just think at this time, Mike Cummings, especially with, I feel, things that are going to be going on as far as economic development, there might be things coming to the zoning board, and I think his experience on the zoning board will help the other board members to move forward. I just think it's where I'm at with that, and if, council feels the same way, I'd like to put that on for legislation. If not, then I'd like to have just more discussion on it if council isn't. What I don't want to ever do is, we certainly don't want to vote somebody down, because that's not what it's about. When you get somebody who wants to serve, I think all council, I think we can come to consensus on somebody, so. I don't know how everybody feels about that at this time. Go ahead,
Mr.
Mr.
Mayor.
Spitznagel.
Thank you. I feel it's the exact same way as you do. We have a board, there are some members on the board that have been there for several years, but there are some new members, and we wanted new blood, so to speak, on that committee. But we also need the experience, especially in this time with what's going up on various projects up there on the corner. And there may be some issues where it's going to take the expertise. And we have a good problem. I say this all the time. We have a good problem in this village where people who step up to the plate, you can toss a coin, and it's a very tough decision for us. I'm happy with that you chose Mr. Cummins, and I will wholeheartedly support him.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr. Spitznagel.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
if
Jennifer.
everyone could be specifically speak into your microphones, I'm getting that the sound is very low.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with everything you said. We certainly don't want to make the newcomers not feel welcome, because they certainly are, and we always need new blood. But at this point in time in the village history, I think we need some real expertise, again, to mirror what Brian just said about what's going on up in the corner. We need to have somebody who knows the ropes. So I support your decision.
Mr.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes, Jennifer.
I have no problem at all with Mr. Cummins becoming a member of the board. As most of you know, I've been asking for a while that we have some term limits with our boards, because we have had in the past quite a few people applying for the positions and showing great interest. So my desire is that we can start incorporating other residents. My understanding is Mr. Montello does have some legislation drawn up. I thought we could vote on that, talk about it in October, get through this, and just to let the residents know there will be further opportunities for other residents to become members of these boards too. So I have no problem at all supporting Mike.
Very good. Just to let everybody know, the last, two appointments were two members on zoning that were new. Mr. Ed Roha and
Stephen?
Stephen Belk. And planning, we have a few new members too. So I know this body's talked about term limits and stuff, and I know Mr. Montello's been looking at putting stuff together, so just have to come up with, whether you want to do 2 terms or something, because we'll have to change it. In the ordinance, the ordinance will have to be changed, because in there, it kind of insinuates that they automatically, if everything goes well, have an opportunity for another term, so, but that will be another COW meeting, like you said, in October. If you guys want that on your agenda,
Yeah, please.
that's what we can do. Anybody else related to, any comments on item 5?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Nielsen?
I know that Mr. Cummins has done a great job in the past, and I know that, he's still not.
You're not picking up.
How's that? A little better?
Yeah.
That's better.
Mr. Cummins has done a great job in the past, and I'm sure that he'll be welcomed by the BZA for his leadership and his knowledge. I'm glad that he decided to put his application in a second time, so I fully support him.
Okay. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, just briefly, I support
Yeah.
the recommendation as
Okay.
well.
Very good, thank you, Mr. Whedon. Okay, then I will put that on there for the next council meeting. I'd like to ask for suspension on that, so he can get on board. There's nothing that I'm aware of that's going to be coming to them at this time, but I think it would be, to our best interest to put it on suspension, get, him, he really doesn't have to get acclimated, but the committee still has to get him up to date. So. Okay. Any other business from anybody? Item 6?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Jim.
there was a comment from Ms. Lee Nielsen saying perhaps with the grant for recreation, a full basketball court can be completed. I did reply to her that the grant is fairly specific, but it could be discussed at a possible another rec meeting. I don't know if there's anything that you want to add.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yes, the grant is specific. It's not, we're going to use that entire $48,000 for what we put the grant in for.
Plus,
Plus
Plus.
the 8,000 that we,
Plus, oh yes, exactly. Plus the 8,000 that was in the grant that would be our share. So it's actually 48 plus 8,000. So those entire funds are going to be used for that project. I have no problem attempting another one. As a matter of fact, I talked to Mr. Kalman, who left, he was here at the earlier meeting. In case you didn't listen to the last week's meeting or you weren't here, he was talking to our village engineer, and the engineer told him that there's a possibility of another grant for up there at T.G. Young Park concerning the walking trails, which is going to be about $50,000 to redo those walking trails, but those do get used. So I told him that I would be very happy to work on that with him. So yeah, as far as a full court basketball court, we can, always look into it, and I can always look, the committee can always look for other money to do that. And this, I consider this a fluid, a living process as we move through. That's right. And we're only improving the park. It's a good thing.
Anybody, the only other thing I have under other business is morning meeting with the mayor tomorrow, 9 to 11. Everybody's welcome, as always. There is always some light pastries and things and some juice and stuff, so.
That's tomorrow.
That is tomorrow,
I'll
yes.
be
Okay,
for pastry only.
that's it.
I want bagels.
Well, we better get there early.
I don't have nothing on there. We can put it on for CLW meeting, yeah. So the other, we'll go through these.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
I have one more thing for other business.
Yes.
Last week, Council President Allen asked me to have a meeting sometime coming up for an information committee meeting to discuss a new village directory. And I'd like to do that. I don't know if anybody has meetings next week. Maybe we can just set it up for 5:30 next week if you would like to do that.
That's fine with me. I
Mr.
can make
Nelson,
that.
are you available
Yes.
at 5:30 next week? That'll be before our council meeting. But I wanted to project that out also, even if we weren't going to do the meeting next week, because I have had some people approach me. We have a lot of widows and widowers, and widows especially have approached me with the prospect of taking out first names, if that's the case. So that's something, I wanted to project that out at this meeting, so if anybody had any other ideas. The issue was, some people are, they live alone, and they were hesitant to have only their female name at that address listed in the directory.
Like they used to do years ago with telephone books.
Exactly,
Just be a first
exactly.
initial.
So that's something we'll be talking about. So if anybody, online or in here has some ideas about how we can go about doing that, to protect our residents, we'll be happy to look at that.
Mr. Mayor,
yes, Jennifer.
I had asked Chairperson Spitznagel about that because we are coming into 2023, and normally our phone books were updated every 2 years. So we're coming due for it, and we've had quite a few new residents,
Right.
and residents that may take the time this time around that are new and not in the phone books to actually understand.
And it's going to take several months, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No, go ahead.
It's going to take several months to project that again, because, we can put that in the owl, we can put it in the journal, broadcast it here for 3-4 months. And then, if they don't put their name in, or
Right.
however we decide to do it, then that's on the resident, I guess.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
Can we have
Right.
something where they can fill it in online?
Sure, we can do that. We can have something to fill in the journal. We can maybe possibly put it in the aisle too, if you're not looking at that, and fill
Through
it
the
in
computer or
online.
something, yeah.
Exactly.
Didn't they do it that way online? I think, because Mary was doing it, I think she
Mary,
did it
no.
both ways.
Yeah, we
Well,
filled out slips. Mary,
But she contacted a lot of people. and they
oh my
signed.
gosh, the work Mary put into that was phenomenal. She actually went to the Board of Elections and got all the actual names and addresses and compared them because, you know, people either moved or passed away and we wanted to make sure that was accurate. So she put in a tremendous amount of work into that.
Well, maybe there's a way we could even do a postcard that somebody could fill out and just drop in the white mailbox
Right,
or something.
and we can talk about that at the meeting. I just wanted to broadcast that,
Right.
so if anybody had any ideas for us, please let us know.
I think we all feel it's got some value. I know we've talked about it. I think people like having that, just, they meet somebody or they want to talk to a neighbor or somebody, they have that right in their hands, just strictly Walton Hills, you know, it's really nice. I know in the office there, I use it all the time, you know, because you don't know everybody. You think you do, but you don't, and maybe somebody calls you and you're curious. They don't leave a message, they just leave their name and you're curious. You know, especially in my office there, I get a lot of calls, and the chief will tell you a lot of calls they have to do with court and things like that. So, we call them all back, but sometimes somebody call back a little sooner.
I know we're not technically
Right, Chief?
discussing the phone book, but I think it's imperative too that our residents, especially the new ones, know that this is something strictly within the village.
Right.
I mean, I think we really need to stress that, and that may be why we didn't get all of our residents, you know, that were new in that, but.
Till they find out how valuable that little,
Mhm.
or when you meet them and you say, "Are you in the book?" "What book?" "The book." Okay, they laugh at that. "What do you mean the book?" "Well, that's Walton Hills, it's the book." Even if you don't have a number in there, you at least want your name in the book. You don't have to put your number in there, you could still have your
Yeah,
name
historical
with an
reference.
address. Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
Because some people, you know, relate it, and that's another thing, again, some people relate it to the phone, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. Sometimes somebody calls you and they say, "Hey, could you drop something off? It's nice to look," and you can get the address. So we have people that, you know, you don't have to put your phone number in there or any contact, you can just put your address. So,
I find it advantageous when I have a resident leave a message and I only catch part of their last name and the street. So at least I know what letter of the alphabet I can
right. It helps
go
you.
through.
Anybody under other business? Okay, anything from residents under other business? Mr. Hayden?
For the record, Don Haydu, Rochelle Drive. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. At the last COW meeting last week, I brought up the issue of fireworks on the evening of July 4th. At that time, during discussion, I believe, Mr. Mayor, you more or less basically stated that you were not aware of any issues or incidences, and that you were going to contact the police chief to see if there was any report of any other incidences in the village regarding fireworks. Did you make that contact, and if so, what was the outcome of your discussion?
I have the chief here tonight, and when you're done with your questions, I'll have him respond to that, Don. Because I did. The answer is yes. I did talk to the chief. We have CAD reports for any call. Anytime a resident calls or anybody calls our dispatch, it automatically gets recorded. and it's called the CAD report, correct, Chief? And so me and the chief did discuss that, and he did give me the CAD report. So since he is here tonight, I'll let him answer that. So yes, I did discuss that with him.
Okay, thank you. Should I address my further questions to the chief or to you then? in
Why don't you
regard to
address
the
them,
incident?
you can address, why don't you address them all to me, and then either me or the chief or any council members could answer them.
Okay. Well, basically, too, what I don't understand is that the verbiage of that particular evening was, yes, it's against the law to set off fireworks in the village. And previously, naturally, there was earlier comments in the Owl, I believe, before July 4th. There were previous comments in the publication of what the village puts out to the residents. And yet evidently that was not good enough. So if there's an incident and the police respond to it, is that person arrested for setting off fireworks in the village because they're breaking the law? And how do you treat that? Is that a misdemeanor? What is the penalty for that?
Would finish your questions, and then the chief can
Fine.
answer that. Just because council wants a 5-minute time frame, Don, so get through your questions, and then the chief can answer those, or I can answer them, or whoever,
Right,
okay?
okay, good. So, okay, I'll just listen to the chief's comments then?
Are you, if you're done, I didn't know if you had any other comments.
Pardon me?
I didn't know if you had any other comments.
Oh, not that I can think of at the moment. Basically, I'm looking for more information. Because
Okay.
I think certainly if on the books, so to speak, is all we have is that do not set off any fireworks in Walton Hills because it's against the rule or the law. What do we have really for enforcement and also penalty? If there's nothing there as a deterrent, this thing is going to continue. I mean, how many times maybe do you approach an issue when it's after the first offense, the second offense, and the party keeps continuing doing that, or anyone else, even for a first offense? As long as the village is making it knowledgeable that you shouldn't be doing this, and you're breaking the law, how do we stop? There has to be deterrence. There has to be something in place that discourages people from just saying, I'm risking nothing. All they're gonna do is come out and tell me, shut it down. And what's to stop them from the second time, or just even occurring, and maybe you make a second call even. That's the reason I look at that we have rules and regulations, because we can't rely on the people who are always doing the right thing. There has to be deterrence and penalties. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll stand before you, come on, I just want to, good timing, Don.
Perfect.
The meat thing, stand before you say anything, I just want to kind of share something with everybody relating to that. When the governor changed the law this year, allowing fireworks on multiple days besides 4th of July, this council, the police department, the administration, listened to a lot of people in our village. We have a lot of residents that wanted us to change our ordinance, okay? To accept something along what the governor was allowing. A lot of communities around us said, okay, we're going to allow it for the 4th of July, but we're not going to allow it for these other days. Some communities said, we're going to adopt what the governor says, all the days that he is saying you can blow off fireworks, and follow all the guidelines that were put out by our state, the state of Ohio. After having many conversations with our police chief, his recommendation to council and myself was to keep along with our law solicitors, to keep our current ordinance, which doesn't allow fireworks, the current ordinance that we've had on the books for many years. This council took a very strong stand. I would say for as many people, at least for myself, that approached me about changing it, I had the same that were against it. It was really, for me, was just kind of about split. And I gave them my opinion, and my opinion was to keep the existing ordinance in place. And that's what we did. With council's support, they supported the recommendation from myself, the safety director, along with the police chief, the committee, and council voted 5-0 to keep the current ordinance in place. So I'll have the chief expound on the ordinance, if he has it in front of him, and talk about it, and you can answer Mr. Haydu's questions. And the reason we put it in the Journal and the Owl, because we felt, the committee felt, council felt, the police chief, that a lot of people didn't even know what our ordinance was, and if we didn't put it in there, they would automatically think you automatically follow the state. Okay, and people still think that today. A lot of people don't look at the Journal, they don't look at the Owl, they think, okay, the governing body, the state, had the right to overrule all the community, localities, the cities, the villages, the townships, but that's not the case. We were allowed to either opt in or opt out. So it is an educational thing, and so that's why we put in there. What we put in there was our ordinance. That's what we put in the Journal, and I think the Owl did something very similar, put our existing ordinance in place. So, okay, Stan, if you wanted to expound on or help maybe answer Mr. Haydu's questions.
Mayor, Council. On July 4th, we received 2 calls to the same residence on South Meadow Park that were shooting off fireworks. Our officers responded. They talked to the resident, and they said they were done for the night, which they complied. For the last 30 years since I've been here, on 4th of July, it's always been, we received a complaint, we would respond. We would respond to the location.
You could take it out of there, Stan, if it helps.
Yeah, just move to,
If you want to take the mic out of there, that might help you.
thank you, Chief.
We would respond to the location, advise them, confiscate the fireworks if we had to go back, and then we would cite them. Okay. On July 3rd, we had 2 complaints, one on Walton and another one was on South Meadow Park. Our officers responded, and the grandson was at the house shooting off the fireworks. So officers advised the resident and the grandson that, we opted out of the fireworks, and they complied. So for July 3rd and July 4th, that's the only, we had 3 calls. Like I said, 2 calls on July 3rd and 1 call on July 4th.
Any other questions for the police chief? Mr. Haydu, did that help answer your question? Come up to the mic. And I'm not going to, because I don't want, I felt bad the other day. We don't want to, but I want you to be answered. So come on up. I don't want to get in a debate, but I want you to, if you have a question for the chief, that's fine too.
Again, in regard to when the call is answered, what type of enforcement do you make other than requesting that they shut it down? And is there anything on the books? I still don't understand if there's any penalty there as far as a fine goes, or is it treated as a misdemeanor, or what is the status? Thank you.
Just to answer your question, like I said, on July 3rd, officers responded to one residence. Here it was the grandson that was shooting off the fireworks. It's not fair that we cite the homeowner and say, okay, there's, no leniency, we're gonna cite you the first time around. My officers, they use discretion, when they respond to the call. Like it says, we will respond, we advise, we confiscate, and then we will cite. Okay, for July 4th, having only one complaint, I think that's really great. I mean, how many houses we have in Walton Hills? I mean, they're shooting them around, all around, the other communities, and just to have this one complaint, if you do, you should call the police department if, they are shooting off fireworks in the village, and that our officers will respond. But if we don't know about it, unless our officers are out patrolling and they see fireworks go off or they hear a bang going down the side streets and that, then they'll stop, they'll turn the lights off, they'll sit there, and then if it goes off again, they'll advise them. In the last 5 to 10 years, we maybe cited 2 residents because there was alcohol involved in that and they wouldn't comply, and we did cite them.
Well, we're not gonna have a debate.
No.
I think your question is whether or not there's a fine or something. Stan, if we can print off the ordinance for Mr. Haydu, and it will say what that is and stuff, Don, and you can come up and pick it out. We'll have it at the front window. You can come and get it at any time. You can come up to the mic.
Well, again, if you hear as a neutral person what was said here this evening and everything, no disrespect to the police chief, but he says, oh, it was only the grandson. Well, what I saw and observed, all right, it was a party. A given party in the backyard with a lot of people and skyrockets going up. That's what drew my attention to it. I said, where is this coming from? I could hear the fireworks, and I live a reasonable distance away. I live on Michelle in Barclay Estates. So I took the liberty. I said, wow, what's going up in the air? I said, that's in our village. So I went over and proceeded to see where it was coming from. This was a party in the backyard with many people. The whole front yard was loaded with cars. That didn't happen by accident. That was by invitation, right?
No, people are allowed to have
So
parties.
when you just come to the mic and you
Why
say,
you buy a
well, it
house?
was a grandson, like it
I
was
think that was a different
know,
street.
It's a different
kind of
household.
meaningful,
Right.
not that meaningful. Well, that's not correct. This was a planned event for the people that were invited. So they knew they were breaking the law before they even set them off, right? I would think. So that's why I'm concerned about what is on the books for enforcement and how these calls are handled. Certainly, the officer is going to go up there and request them, hey, this is not right, it's illegal, shut it down. But again, as a resident of this village, we are wasting valuable time of our police officers, cost-wise, expense-wise. That's not what it's about. Okay? If they're breaking the law, they got to be held accountable. There should be something in place. All right, maybe you give them a break and say on the first offense. But if you recall, before July 4th, when I addressed council about the issues that I saw on TV talking about this law, that unfortunately the problem was created by our governor. At least he gave the consideration where we could opt in or opt out, but you're nothing but asking for trouble. the law should have never been put into effect anyhow. Because he was against it from the beginning. And he changed his mind for whatever reason. All right?
It's supposed to go.
So, the point of the matter is, these people were aware of it. And this wasn't just an isolated thing, it was a planned event. So, as I recall, me making the statement at, before July 4th, when I spoke
You're gonna have
in
to
the
wrap
press
it up now.
council, about the councilwoman from the city of, I believe, Lorraine. She says, I'm against all fireworks. Says, if I had my way, I would make it $1,000 for the first event. And I almost fell off the chair. I said, it's a little stiff, but it'll get the message across, wouldn't it? But I still would like to make the recommendation to this governing body that something that should be put on the books, that if you're cited, this is the penalty. Rather than wasting our policemen's time, which is very valuable. Okay, thank you again.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Well, hang on, Stan, go ahead. But I'm just gonna make a point here. We did keep our existing ordinance, which does have penalties and fines. And how many did we have for 4th of July?
Just the one.
We had one complaint on the 4th of July, so sometimes we have more than that on noisy things, even arguments between residents. So one complaint on the 4th of July, our ordinance didn't do too bad. It actually did very good. Especially as mayor, I've talked to a lot of communities who allowed fireworks, and their police departments were tasked that day. Our police department, Donna, as you say, you feel they should waste time. We didn't waste any time. We had one call on the 4th of July. So our police were not out running around. They were taking more important things and doing more important things. So we were very fortunate. Just wanted to make that point. So we had one complaint, according to the chief, one calling on the 4th of July. So go ahead, Stan.
Just to make it clear, July 3rd is when our officers responded to South Meadow Park, and it was the grandson that was shooting them off, not July 4th. So, different resident, he was just there by himself with his grandfather. So, they were advised, and they complied.
Don, I seriously, I think what we'll do is like John said, we'll put the ordinance in place, unless you can get online, and then you can pick it up anytime if you want. At least then you have a chance. I know I offered that last time, but at least you have a chance to look at it so you can better understand it too. We can do that. Brian, anybody else have any?
I just have something quick. Yeah, I was gonna, the chief stated what I was gonna say, that the incident happened on July 3rd with the grandson. The incident that you saw on North Meadow Park on July 4th was completely different. And I lived by there, and my wife and I didn't hear a thing. Now, that doesn't mean they weren't doing anything. Obviously they were, but we didn't hear a thing. And the point is that the police can't do anything unless either they happen to be driving around and see it, and I don't want to project how many police officers we do have out on the street, but the likelihood of them seeing something is probably very minimum with all the other things they're doing. And if something is going on that you see that is illegal, call Village Hall. The police don't know, can't do anything about it, don't know anything about it unless residents do call. So a call probably should have been made, and then they would have responded to that call. And as far as the penalty, there is a penalty, and I just don't remember what it is. It is a first offense, is a misdemeanor of some type. And I know you mentioned that woman that council lady, we don't have the luxury of saying, we're gonna fine you $1,000. If something is, and Mr. Montello can speak to this more intelligently than I can, but if something is classified as a certain degree of
Severity.
Severity, thank you. It only has a penalty range, or a maximum penalty can be only this, and that's state law. We can't just make our own penalties up. So if it is a penalty, you know, misdemeanor of the first degree, second degree, third degree, that levies with it certain fines that the state really controls. Am I correct, Mr. Montello?
It's just, and it's also up to a judge to determine what the fine should be, you know. It's not something we could just say absolute mandatory $1,000 fine. I think it is a first-degree misdemeanor, if I'm not mistaken, which carries a possible penalty up to 6 months in jail and up to $1,000 fine. It could be a lesser degree, I don't remember, but I somehow remember first-degree misdemeanor. So there is penalties available. But in today's society, we're geared toward resolving issues rather than punishing people to, you know, for a mistake that they may or may not have been aware of. If the police go there and they don't stop,
Talking to the mic.
if the police go there and they don't stop, then we will cite them. I mean, our society's geared to resolving issues, not escalating issues these days. And that's what the police are trained to do. And that's what we do.
So what I'll do, Don, I'll get you the ordinance, and that way you can see it and stuff and see what it is. Anybody else have any other questions related to anything, council? If not, I'd like to ask for a motion for adjournment.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for adjournment of the COW meeting of September 13th, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
Vote on the motion. Jennifer Allen?
Yes.
Mary Brenner Miller?
Yes.
Fred Nielsen?
Yes.
Raymond Whedon?
Yes.
Brian Spitznagel.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned at 8:05 PM. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
I think you might be right.
But as you said, that's what the judge.
And, you know, I, the judges, they're not, the fireworks, they can go find somebody, but.
Sure, it's dangerous or whatever.
A dog pooping on a dog. You know, a dog at large.
Yeah. Right.
Ulcers or something?
I believe the guys are serious. Somebody could get hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think